Our beautiful, elegant, and graceful Ayaka is coming back really soon, just under a week away as the moment I post this video. And so, since she has been released for quite a while, there can be certain changes to her build, which is why today we have a video on a complete updated Ayaka build for you, so that if you are going to be pulling for her in the upcoming banner, or if you're looking to improve your Ayaka and take your damage to the next level, you can do that also. Now guys, if you're new to the channel, I usually do monthly giveaway on our Discord channel, including character giveaways. So if you're interested, be sure to subscribe to the channel and join our Discord server to enter. And with that, let's jump into the video. First, we'll have a look at Ayaka's overview, in which she is a character when she was first released all the way back in August. Some of us have already waited for 2 years since the very first closed beta, and she was also practically one of the first characters that was shown to be playable in Genshin Impact. And yet it wouldn't be until version 2.0 when she was finally arrived, and some of us have even saved tens of thousands of Primogems in anticipation for our princess release. And once she was released, she certainly lived up to expectations. She had really good looking animation, gameplay, and meta-wise she immediately performed at the very highest level, helping players go through the game content very easily. And up until now, Ayaka is still one of the most popular characters, especially in some of these current Abyss where her uses is always on the higher end. Plus, Abyss is still in favor of cryo characters, so whenever Ayaka is available, you can easily annihilate most of the enemies. However, there has been mixed opinion about Ayaka, mainly because of her unique dash. As popular as she may be, many doesn't like her playstyle, therefore skipping her, which is something very normal, hence why we have many different characters in the game for different player preferences. Now, whenever talking about Ayaka, the question that have always been asked is whether Ayaka is best as a sub DPS or as a DPS, in which the answer would actually be both. She can be in both positions and do absolutely fantastic. The question here is just about how do you want to use her, because running her as a DPS or as a sub DPS will have slightly different playstyle. As a DPS, you will focus a lot more on her normal and charge attack being on field, versus sub DPS you'll be in more of a quick swap team and just focusing on building her energy to use her burst. However, there is a particular reason why many people would prefer her to be as a sub DPS on the team, because even though her dash is buffed by MiHoYo and it feels better to use, many of us still can't always get used to it, and if you're using her as a DPS, you will be constantly using her dash. If you don't like it, it's going to be tough to use. Moreover, Ayaka DPS will mostly be focused on her charge attack because it has really good scaling. However, it can feel a bit clunky at times because there's usually a slight delay before you can activate her charge attack again. And also, spamming charge attack isn't something that everyone liked, which is why many would tend to play her as a sub DPS. So we've already talked a bit about Ayaka's kit in the section above, but here we'll quickly go through her kit again, as well as the best Ayaka combos and advanced tips and tricks so you can take your Ayaka gameplay to the next level. Now, Ayaka has access to some of the best passive talent in the game, where both of her passive support DPS capability tremendously. Her first passive gives her a whopping 30% increase in normal and charge attack for 6 seconds, and judging from the fact that she only has a 10-second cooldown E skill, that's a really good start buff on her. Even though you're not going to be using her as a DPS, you're still going to want to put in 1 to 2 charge attack here and there after you have cast her E skill. Her second passive is also really good. Whenever she applies cryo at the end of her dash, she will restore 10 stamina for her, which is very spammable when you're trying to dodge with Ayaka. Furthermore, she gets an 18% cryo damage bonus, which is absolutely not every time I think about why MiHoYo allows this. All of her passive talents are just so good. Her normal attack has a 5-hit combo and is just absolutely beautiful and stunning to look at. However, her 5th and 4th string actually being the weakest, unlike most of the other characters where the more down the line your combo goes, the more damage you can deal. Reason being is that her 4th and 5th animation has rather low scaling, but more than that, on her 5th animation you generally be stuck in a very long delay time before you are able to get back into your combo. However, for Ayaka's charge attack, she's currently having one of the best charge attack in the game with very high scaling, and what's good about it is that Ayaka is basically the only character until now that has a very long charge attack for a sword user. The hitbox is just really far and wide, so you can hit multiple enemies even when they are standing a bit far apart from her. As for Ayaka's best combo, you generally want to go either with a dash into one normal attack and charge attack and then dash out cancel again, or with a dash and then two normal attack to a charge attack and then dash cancel. Usually these will be the best damage output for Ayaka. We don't want to go to her 4th and 5th string animation once again unless you want to do a combo finisher on the enemy for a stylish combo. Also, since her passive refund your stamina, you can actually spam her dash quite a bit. We have a dash before the start of the combo because you want the elemental damage increase, and then the dash out after her charge attack because the charge attack takes a long delay time before you can use it again, hence why we have a dash so that you can cancel it out. As for Ayaka's elemental skills, it's very straightforward. She creates a circle of ice around her that will launch smaller enemies into the air. This ability doesn't really have too long of an animation, but it can be shortened by dashing out. This is also obviously her main energy source, creating 4 to 5 particles per use. Now moving on to Ayaka's elemental burst. This is her strongest technique. Her elemental burst, regardless of you building her as a DPS or a sub DPS, will be the main source of her damage, and until now it's still one of the strongest elemental bursts in the game. Her burst will unleash a snowstorm with 19 cuts dealing AoE damage followed by a bloom at the end. This ability will be able to snapshot, so for example if you're using Ayaka with Bennett, the whole of the burst duration will be buffed by Bennett's burst. And as you may have known, Ayaka burst is very easy to miss. By missing here, it can mean either hitting no enemies or only hitting one Hurley Churl out of a whole group of them. But more than that, larger enemies can just simply walk out of her burst. So when using Ayaka, making sure that she is able to hit all of her bursts to as many enemies at the same time as possible is the top priority, which is why it is so important that you're running her in a comp like Freeze comp to lock enemies in place, or have a crowd control character like Venti to help grouping. We'll discuss on how to build team in the team building section. However, it is crucial to keep in mind the most important support requirement for Ayaka in order to get the maximum DPS output from her. As for talent priorities, whether you're running Ayaka as a DPS or as a sub DPS, your talent priorities will always going to be leveling up her burst first, and then her normal attack if you're going for DPS, and if you're a sub DPS build, then you can just focus on her E skill without having worried too much about her normal attack talent. Now we'll go through Ayaka's top weapon options. For both DPS and sub DPS, they will be relatively the same. Her top 2 options for 5-star at this point will still be the Mist Splitter and Jade Cutter. They can actually perform at very close level depending on which build you're running with Ayaka, because Jade Cutter generally just give you a lot of crit rate so you can focus on other stats. However, Mist Splitter will still give you higher damage output overall due to its insane passive. So if you're having both of these weapons, you can technically look into which stats you're missing and give Ayaka that weapon. Now I'm sure many of you will be asking whether the Haran is good on Ayaka, and I would say it's good. However, even though the passive really benefits Ayaka's normal attack, you're having basically no buff for her burst, which is again her main source damage output. Therefore, this makes the Haran by far the best option for Ayaka. It can even fall behind the weapon like the Summit Shaper, which is generally harder to use on Ayaka as it requires shield uptime and available stacks to get the most out of it. But either way, if you have the options like the Haran or the Summit Shaper, then it's still one of her best 5-star weapon, and generally always better than the 4-star option out there already. As for Ayaka's 4-star options, we have the craftable Aminoma Kaguichi. It just helps a ton with Ayaka's energy recharge, cutting down her energy requirement by a 40% energy recharge. Highly recommended as the go-to 4-star weapon, and you don't really need to look for any other options. Other than that, I wouldn't really recommend you any other 4-star. There's option like the Black Sword or the Black Cliff. However, they're not going to get you too much of a difference, and they cost a lot for a free-to-play player. So it's not recommended, but you can still use it if you want to. There's also the Harbinger of Dawn that you can easily get it to R5. However, it's only an early game weapon, and you can just use the Aminoma once you get to Inazuma. Moving on to artifacts. As a cryo character, you usually have a standard artifact sets which you go to, and that's the Blizzard Strayer. It's her most optimal sets in the majority of the situations. In Freeze team, even if you're having not really good stats on your artifact sets, you can still have really high damage output because of the sheer 40% crit rate that you get. That is already very good. However, there's also another option set that rivals the Blizzard Strayer, especially when you're running a build of sub DPS Ayaka, and that's the Emblem Fate. It's very perfect for her if you're just going for sub Ayaka, because you're definitely never going to have to worry too much about her energy recharge, and your burst will be spammable most of the time. You only need to find ways to balance out more on the crit ratio, as you're not getting crit bonuses like the Blizzard Strayer set. Other than that, you can still go with options like the 2-piece Blizzard Strayer and 2-piece Glad, or the 2-piece Noblesse if you find that you can get better crit ratio from that. Now, as far as artifact stats goes, your Sans will be attack percentage most of the time. Unless you're running Emblem Fate, then you can consider running energy recharge Sans, as it does give a decent buff to your burst as well. Goblet will always be cryo, and then the circlet will technically be crit damage most of the time, as you have cryo resonance for Ayaka. Running Blizzard Strayer will already have you covered on the crit rate side, but either way, be aware of which crit stats you're missing and go for that. There's also a lot of questions regarding how much energy recharge Ayaka needs, because we need her burst on all of the time for maximum DPS output, and this depends largely on which weapon you use, artifacts you're running, and then the teammates you're having. Because clearly, if you're running Amenoma, then you're getting help from its passive in terms of energy. If you're running Emblem Fate, then you never have to worry about energy, and generally Ayaka have a cryo battery like Diona for her. So usually the sweet spot for you would be around 150% energy recharge and above. Any less than that, and it can be a little bit hard for you to have a burst up all the time. Moving on to Ayaka team builds. Now, Ayaka generally have 3 teams options: Perma-Freeze, Melt, and Mono Cryo, in which Perma-Freeze is definitely the most go for Ayaka because it helps locking enemies in place. Basic team build here will be you having another cryo support, a Hydro character, and an Anemo for resistant shreds. Either of these characters can be a healer on the team. Then we have Melt. This is actually the less go-to option for Ayaka team because she can't consistently melt from her attack, and leaving melt damage done by other member of the team. Also, while running Melt, you mostly won't get cryo resonance and blizzard crit bonus, but either way, it can still be very powerful in certain situations, which we'll discuss in a bit. For this team, you can just have a double pyro and an Anemo character. And finally, there's Mono Cryo, which is a really powerful option, however only most usable if you have Shanhe on the team. The reason why I say Shanhe is because she's a very powerful niche cryo support for the team, so having her in the Mono Cryo team just hits so much different than not having her. Either way, even if you don't have Shanhe, then you can still build a pretty decent Mono Cryo team around Ayaka. And also guys, just so that you're aware, there's actually no answer to the question of what is Ayaka's strongest team, because what may perform perfectly in one scenario against one set of enemies may not work in other situations. As once again, playing Ayaka requires you to think of her burst most of the time. How can we use her burst in the best way while getting its damage to as high as possible? In which, here's a question that you always want to ask yourself when using Ayaka, especially when you're going in the abyss. That is, are you facing the enemies that can be grouped and freezable? You have to know this because the team build can largely be different. Keep in mind that when you're up against world bosses or larger enemies, they usually cannot be grouped by skills like Venti's Burst. Therefore, running grouping character here will likely be a loss of space on your team. Or again, world bosses type enemies or the Abyss Lecter apart from the Hydro Lecter cannot be frozen. So if you're running a Perma-Freeze team, the Hydro character on the team will not be as useful. And better yet, just go for a team like Mono Cryo to deal with the situation. And this is also where Melt Ayaka can be pretty good also. Other than that, then Perma-Freeze with grouping enemies like Venti's Burst skills will be good for Ayaka the majority of the time. So Ayaka has been out for almost a year now, but she's still a character that keeps her position as a meta character, especially in the Abyss, because of how good her skills are. Her burst once again feels very satisfying to use with its animation, and its damage level is just so good that many of us really prefer to use her over other characters. She's very easy to build, being a cryo character, and have access to very good free-to-play weapons, making Ayaka very accessible for free-to-play player to have a very good DPS character on their account. So I hope that this updated build video have been able to help you find the best build for your Ayaka. If you do have any question, feel free to leave down in the comment section and I will get to you there. Now, if you're looking for other character build, then I have a whole list of them for you to check out. I'm sure it will be very helpful to you for building those characters. If you're new to the channel guys, be sure to subscribe as I create guides content for free-to-play player, and I am sure that you get a lot of values out of all these videos. With that guys, I wish you a super day and I will catch you on the next video.